Okay, so I have to apologize ahead of time because this one's going to be confusing. I'm just gonna dive right into it, and you might have to back up, pause, and rewind this video several times, and you might even have to, you know, do a Google search for a little more additional information. So let's just dive into it. This is about positioning, okay? So the best way I can explain it is, why don't we just start here? So, we're all familiar with Microsoft Word, right? And we all know, what a text box is in Microsoft Word. So let's have a look at that. So insert, where's my text box? Alright, text box. Oh, slow computer. Okay, so we all know what a text box is in a computer. So or in Microsoft Word, we know that we could resize a text box. Okay, we can move it around anywhere we want. All right, and we also know that we can have, many different text boxes if we want. All right. Okay, and when text boxes can interact with each other, they can go on top of each other, inside of each other, and what have you. All right, so we're going to do the same thing in CSS and HTML. Instead of calling them text boxes, I'm going to call them divs. All right, so that's the best way I can explain it. So what we're going to do is we have a main div here. You can't see it, but it's there. All right, and just so you know what it looks like, you can see in the coding. So if you click on your index file, you notice here that we have in the body section we have a div called main content. All right, this div starts here and it ends way down here. All right. The cool thing about Notepad++ is it'll tell you where the div starts, and in purple it'll tell you where the div ends. All right. So this main content encircles basically all the content, every graphic except for the background graphics. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this main content, all right, this main content div, this main content text box, and we're essentially going to center it. I'm going to put it right in the middle. So I'm going to make it look like this. And what I'm going to do is every time when I resize it, okay, when I resize the window, what it's going to do is that it's going to continuously center the main div. Okay, so just think of a big square text box around this content, and as I resize it, the website will continually the website will continue to calculate the center of it and keep on centering it. That's what I want it to do. Okay, now here's how you do it. So how do I change this into this? Okay, well, here's how we do it. So I'm going to get into my style sheet here. All right. And first of all, I need to have some CSS code that applies to the main content. All right. So this is the main content. This is the ID tag. So I need to define some styling for this main content, which encompasses all of this stuff here. Okay. Everything I'm highlighting here, it encompasses right down to here. So how do I do that? Well, I start off with the number sign. Don't ask me why it's a number sign. You just do it. Okay, main content. Okay, open squiggly bracket, close squiggly bracket. So this text here obviously has to be the exact same as this text here. All right. Okay, main content. And here, before I start out, I'm going to save it. And I'm going to get back to my browser. I'm going to go to W3 Schools. I'm going to go to CSS3. I'm going to go to Reference. And I'm going to scroll down to where it says Position. Position. Okay. I'm going to spend about 20 minutes, half an hour exploring all this about the position properties. Alright. So take a look at this. You could try out this example here. Very cool. Okay. You could you could try this here. It teaches you these ones here, examples, trying stuff. You could easily spend 20 minutes to half an hour doing this. So pause it now and check it out. Alright? Okay, so now that you're back in the video, and if you're listening to this now, that means you spent about 20 minutes or half an hour exploring the W3 Schools tutorial on positioning. Now we're going to use positioning. So I'm going to go position. So you should know what this is from your explorations, I guess. And I'm going to go fixed. Alright. So if you get back on here, explain what fixed is. The element is positioned relative to the browser's window. So meaning my text box, okay, my text box here is relative to this corner of the browser window, wherever that corner is. Not relative to another text box, not relative to any other element, but it's relative to this corner right in here, right there. Okay? So when I go fixed, alright, what I want to do is I want to left 50%. And this is how I'm going to center it. Alright? So what I want is I want this text box to move in from the left 50%. 50% of the screen. So if the screen is this big, I want it to move in 50%. If the screen is this big, I want it to move left 50%. Okay? So this property here is really essentially how I center this website, or how I center that div, that text box. Okay? And remember, the text box, imagine it being the div, imagine it being a text box that surrounds all the data. Okay? Now check this out. So this is the property, this is the colon, and this is the value, and then in the value is a semicolon. Alright, so now what I'm going to do now is I want the width of my text box or div to be 800 pixels. I just chose that number. Alright, according to that's just the size of my box. It's a good size. Alright, most devices can accommodate it, most screens can accommodate it. It's not too small, not too big. Alright, now so the width of my text box, the width of my div is going to be 800 pixels, and all these three properties is going to apply to the main content div, which is here, applies to this whole area here. Right? Now in here, what I want to do now is I'm going to go margin. Okay, now let's just see what it looks like. Okay, let's just see what it looks like from here. So let's go back to here. Okay, and let's go refresh it. So it looks like that. So what it did is it moved, basically the text box or the div is here, 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 and here. So it moved the edge of the text box or the div 50% in to the middle of the screen right here. But because the text box is 800 pixels wide, I need to move it back 400 pixels, or half of the width of the text box or div. Did you catch that? Okay, repeat myself. Because I told the browser to move the div or text box 50% from the left margin, that's exactly what it did. This is the edge of the text box or div right here. Okay, and the text box goes 800 pixels this way. Now in order to center it, if the text box is 800 pixels wide, half of 800 is 400, I need to pull it back by 400 pixels. That's how I center it. Okay, so what I would need to do here is I need to go margin left. Okay, margin left, okay, minus 400 pixels. Alright, so what that's going to do, it's going to pull it back. Check this out. Alright, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this cookie jar over here and move a bunch of links here. So this is roughly where I want to be. Then I'm going to move the cookie jar over to here. I'm going to move these three links here. Alright, the cookie jar are going to move relative to not the position of the screen, but relative to the div. Okay, repeat myself. Relative to not the position of the screen, but relative to that div or that text box. Okay. So so that's how I center it. Now let's just check if the centers. All right. So now with a small screen, okay, the text box is 800 pixels wide. This is the center of the screen. Sorry, wrong one. Okay. Well, you can't really see it right now, but it will center. Okay. So the text box starts here. It goes from 800 pixels and ends right about here. Right. This is the middle of it. Okay. And you can see that the middle has moved in from the left margin 50% of the screen and pulled back half of the 800 pixels wide. That's 400 pixels. Alright, it did exactly what I told it to do. Now just to add some nice touches here, I'm going to go border, okay, 10 pixels. Alright, now see what that does. Okay, well I can't really see it from here. What that does is add a nice little border around it, a nice little padding around the div or text box, and what the heck, I'm going to go top colon 2%. Okay, and I want to move it down slightly. Okay, it may not do anything here. Okay, there. So I just move it a hair, 2% of the screen. So watch this. Right. So if the screen is smaller, alright, if the screen is smaller and it moves it down 2%, you see that it's less than if the screen is larger. Right? I moved it down 2%. So 2% of a larger screen is smaller than 2% of a larger screen is bigger than 2% of a smaller screen. So instead of moving it down by 10 pixels, which it'll move it down 10 pixels, doesn't matter if it's a big screen or if it's a small screen, okay, you can move it down by a percentage point instead, okay? So now what I'm going to do is, using the same method, I'm going to move the cookie jar over. Right, so using this method, using the same position methods here, the cookie jar, I would move the cookie jar to this side of the div. So in this case here, the div is here. This is the center of the div. 400 pixels this way, the div ends here. 400 pixels this way, the div ends here. So I want to move the cookie jar from here over to this side here. Okay, so I need to move the cookie jar right about to here. Right about to here. Okay, so I'm going to do that. Now, first of all, let's look at the HTML file. So if you look at the HTML file, here it is. So check this out. So the div is here. You notice the cookie jar is in a div or text box that's inside of the main content text box. So the cookie jar starts here and it ends here. Alright, it's a text box. This is a text box within a text box. This is a div within this div. So I need to specify the position of the cookie jar relative not to the browser, but relative to the text box that it's inside of. So it needs to be relative instead. Okay, so check this out. So I'm going to go back to here. Alright, now I need to apply it to a different HTML tag. So I'm going to go number sign. Now what is the name of that div? Cookie jar. Right? Isn't that a great name? So you name your divs or text boxes obviously according to the data that's inside of it. I would hope to think that's kind of obvious. So cookie jar position, relative, R-E-L-A-T, relative, alright, and then left. Okay, we're going to move it, I don't know, let's call it 280 pixels. Alright, and you close this off with a close. Okay, there it is. Alright, so let's see what that does. So Control S to save it. Go back to here. Oops. Refresh it. There you go. Alright, you see that it moved over. So if you didn't see it, let's just see what it looks like. So without this, actually let's do this. I'll show you this. Let's put a comment around that. So put a comment there. That's a / star and then a / /. So put a comment around it, it turns green. When it's commented like this, that means the computer is going to ignore it, and then it moves from there. Okay, now I'm going to take this comment here, I'm going to move it down here. Okay, this becomes color coded and active again. Control S to save it, go back to your browser, refresh it, and I've pushed it over. Okay, so there you have it. There's a crash course in positioning using CSS.